What if I told you that there exists an episode in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure which had all of its key animation and animation direction done by a single person, and that they basically just appeared all for the sake of this one episode and then disappeared from the series? Well, it's true, such an episode does exist. And looking at the title of the episode, at first I thought about including a certain other episode in this video, a far more famous one at that, but the episode in question doesn't really fit the title, as it still had multiple key animators working on it despite this animation director being a solo effort. But I'm sure we'll get to that episode eventually on the channel. But the episode I'll be discussing now genuinely had all of the animation work, aside from in-betweening, done by one person. And I'm of course talking about Diamond is Unbreakable episode 16. Let's go out hunting. So it's the rat episode, guys. We're discussing the rat episode. Okay. So this is one of Diamond is Unbreakable's outsourced episodes, but compared to the other outsourced episodes, this one is actually interesting from a production standpoint. So okay, some basics. The episode adapts the entirety of the Let's Go Hunting arc, covering 5 full chapters, and the series director Naoka Tsuda mentioned that this standalone arc was an opportunity to try new things, which is good that they're doing this. I'll just say it, if JoJo was a more rigid production which demanded a consistent art style at all times like Demon Slayer, this episode could not have existed. But we have good series directors on JoJo, which is good. So yeah, viewers will immediately notice the art style. It is way more detailed than other JoJo episodes, JoJo Part 4 episodes, with thicker line work and more extreme clothing folds being the most notable features of the episode. The madman who animated the episode entirely is Naruhito Sekikawa, who's a freelancer often associated with Studio Pierrot, which is why this episode is often grouped with the other Pierrot outsourced episodes. Letting the unique artwork stay unique for the episode instead of correcting it to be more on model with the other episodes by like a chief animation director, I think it tremendously helped with the production, because this is basically just an episode where 2 people are just doing their absolute wildest solo ventures. Okay, who's the second person? Well, that would be the storyboarder and director. Naoka Tsuda, the series director, describes the man as a true veteran, that being Yoriyasu Kogawa, who had done work on many other anime, and Tsuda mentions that Kogawa may have created the least JoJo-like directed episode in the whole series, but he was still so impressed by the work that he'll be contacting him in the future again, and which he did. For there's like a handful of Diamond Unbreakable episodes which have a storyboard by Kogawa later on, but this would end up being the only episode he directed and storyboarded, Kogawa. So yeah, some other benefits of the episode being a singular animation effort. I told that it helped with the production of other episodes, but there's also some other unique quirks that this solo production allowed. For example, Jotaro has unique clothing for the episodes, like the likes of which we don't see anywhere else in the anime, and usually the anime has removed unique clothing for example, first-time appearances of characters where the manga had different clothes for them, so that the animators presumably get used to the sheets better. But here, since it was just one person animating the entire episode, they just let him do Jotaro with a different outfit for the episode. I mean, it's a cool outfit, yeah. And the storyboard by Kogawa is, I'd say it's quite creative, and because it rarely ever relies on manga panels, and it's like such a treat for the eyes. And sometimes JoJo episodes can feel like, oh, it's all directed by the same person. Sometimes you get that feeling. It's a good feeling, but sometimes it can feel a bit homogeneous after a while, when it's just like constant split screen spam and so on. It's not to say that that's a bad thing, but it is something. There are certain tropes in JoJo's directing which people do notice as they watch and rewatch the series. But this episode does something quite unique, which in that sense, Naokatsu Tsuda was correct that this is perhaps the least JoJo-like directing in the whole series. But it's good, I think it's commendable that they went to take this risk regardless. So here's some highlights of the storyboard. Stand auras are especially well utilized. Sometimes in other episodes they feel tacked on, but here, in some scenes, the stand auras act like a light source, and they're such a good guide for the viewer on where you should look. Like the storyboard Gogawa took into account how the aura is a moving part on screen, so the viewer would be looking at those areas. And you know, ever since part 4, the stand auras have been visual effects, but you know, the compositing is so good for them that honestly I prefer this approach over the hand-drawn auras from part 3, which were perhaps a bit more extreme looking. The part 4 auras, just honestly, they just look nice. So yeah, the storyboard also features lots of first-person shots, which may have been deliberate to show, you know, the characters are hunting. The whole episode is about aiming. So there's a bunch of shots of Jotaro pointing his finger, Jotaro looking with binoculars, and just overall the characters walking with first-person shots. And then of course the rat, when the rat is using his stand, there's first-person aiming reticle imagery employed there. So that's great. Sekikawa's animation and drawings, the drawings are they are just absurdly detailed, especially for the flesh cubes, and it fits so well because the directing is a bit more down to earth than usual, and then the drawings are also more detailed than usual. So these like melted together humans and rats as flesh cubes, like they actually look creepy, and these detailed drawings are all over the place with the gore and creepy scenarios in the episode. For example, there's this diabolically creepy close-up of the mouse. When the mouse spots Josuke, it's like almost like a jump scare, and then Jotaro's hand is just like so grotesque after he's been inflicted, and all of the Jotaro's and Josuke's injuries when taking hits from the rat. So yeah, one example of how the episode feels different from a regular JoJo episode, and we can see where Tsuda was coming from, is that there's like so much negative space inside of this house. Like the characters aren't taking up as much space like what I feel like a standard JoJo director would have done for these shots. Also gonna give a shout out to the sound design. Like it's just great. All of the slow motion actions especially hit different, and I mean, just look at this dynamic storyboard for when the rat is escaping from under the table. It's like great. And you know, this episode actually uses the same style for faraway characters as part 5 later on, where if a character is far away, they won't have facial features. They will just have like a blank face, which honestly I prefer, because so many people bullied the part 4 faraway shots, and you know, well, part 5 didn't really get bullied because they just didn't have facial features from far away. So yeah, also this particular Star Platinum shot and the entire like evening scene, like the compositing is really good. Like there's such a good like gradient and blur effect going on. It's just such a nice visual. It's just good to look at. So that obviously comes down to how the director, so Kogawa, communicated their will to the compositing department, and they've done a good job here. I don't think there is a better looking evening scene in part 4 than what we see in this episode. Like this episode has the best evening scene in part 4, hands down in my opinion. And yeah, the action scenes with Jotaro using time stop and the two dodging the rat and, you know, Josuke running the rat, it's all really well executed. It's really like the feeling that the rat is like a sniper operator gets across really well. Like the rat is camping, and it also helps that there's a new piece of music specifically for only this scene, you know, the theme of the rat bug eaten. And yeah, there's some creative stuff going on here, like when JoJo uses the time stop, like his stand like replaces him and stuff like that. It's just like so interesting. So all in all, this episode is definitely one for the history books, and I think the most commendable thing about on the animation aspect here is that usually when an episode is a solo effort like this, usually from the animation front, that means that it'll be very limited. It won't move much. But Sekigawa here has actually like there's actually quite a bit of animation. Like there's lots of subtle movements. There's some actual sakuga at a couple of instances. Like it doesn't move any less than any other JoJo episode. So yeah, I think this episode is definitely remembered fondly for the correct reasons, but it's also interesting to see how it came to be as this solo effort from both the animator and the director. So yeah, thank you for watching. This was Diamond is Unbreakable episode 16.